I am joined today by another prospective co-host, Mack of Mack Media. Hey, how are you doing, sir?
Good. How are you doing tonight, Script?
I'm doing well. So you have some thoughts about the script we reviewed this past week, Madden. Please, the floor is yours, Mack. Take it away. Tell us your thoughts on Madden.
Oh, all right. Thank you. I really appreciate that. Yeah, I got to say overall, I would give this 4 out of 5 stars. I did enjoy the script. It was a pretty quick read. Just sat down, read it in one sitting, and I'm a Madden fan, football fan, and I played a lot of video games. So yeah, this was like right up my alley. So I enjoyed it quite a bit. Yeah, I kind of got 3 sections here. I've got the good, the bad, and then some fixes or changes I might recommend or make. So you want me just to go ahead and jump right into the good first?
Yeah, let's talk a little bit about the good. You opened up by saying that it was a fast, easy read. This I concur with. I thought the writer did a great job kind of conveying what they wanted to say in a quick and easy manner that didn't require a whole bunch of effort on our part, at least, to kind of decipher what his angle was, so to speak.
Yeah, and honestly, I've read maybe 3 scripts in my entire life, and the other ones were years ago. So reading this one, I don't have a ton of experience to fall back on, but I felt like this was it moved well. I could imagine everything very very easily, especially remembering John Madden growing up as a kid. So yeah, it felt good. I enjoyed it. Plus it was something I was into. I'm sure not every script we get every week is going to be my preferred genre, but yeah, especially the horror stuff. I'm kind of like, okay, here we go. I don't love horror, but it'll be fun to see when we get some of those scripts. But yeah, so for the good, I've got a few bullets. So first off, most of the dialogue I really liked. I felt like it flowed well. I thought it worked in the settings in which we got them. Not all of it for sure, and I'll get to that in my bad section. But most of it was really good, especially that opening with John Madden's long-winded build-up to burning the ref. I don't remember the exact quote for the delivery. Plus, I wouldn't want to spoil it for other people, but I was laughing. That was great.
Yeah, I found that to be pretty funny too. His dismay with the refs' calls and how much he disagreed with them, I thought were very strong. And the framing with how John was trying to convey in that moment, I thought was funny. The whole I'm going to propose to the ref because he wants to make an honest woman out of him after the amount of screwing that he's receiving from all these bad calls. I'm like, that's a
Yeah.
pretty clever way, and that's a memorable way to start a script.
No, I was just gonna say I'm a firm believer. Any story, I don't care if it's on film or television or in a book. Like you have to pull people in, and the opening scene is so important. If you got me laughing that hard, and I could see it so well in my mind's eye, it was well written. It wasn't overly complex. You're sitting there on the end of that, end of that hook, like, wait, where's he going with this? What? What? It built up really well, and then when it got to delivery, it was worth it. It wasn't cheesy. It wasn't some sort of cliche. It was good. I didn't see it. I didn't know. I was like, what is he going to say? I know he's going to say something. I just didn't know what it was until it came out of his mouth, and I loved it. It was great. It was a great opening.
Yeah, I think it had some great setup there. That's one of the things I always appreciate about a strong opening is how well can you frame the context between the characters that are at odds with each other and kind of make this into its own little mini movie that is a stepping stone to the next conflict that this character is going to face.
Yes, and the conflict is what keeps us interested. And in this, we just knew, hey, it's a bad call, or he believes it's a bad call, and he's unhappy with this ref, which anyone who's watched sports, especially football, can relate to not being happy with the ref, So it was good. I loved that. So the next thing that stood out to me was the scene where we got the quick cuts between Madden, his wife Virginia, and the press.
Yes.
I could really see that, and I thought I love when they do. I mean, would you call this a montage? What would we call this? What's the technical
This is an
term?
intercut sequence. So it's an intercut between two situations that are centered around Madden. Well, technically 3, because it's him talking to the press, announcing his retirement from the game, from coaching. Then
Right.
we've got Al, the owner, also commenting on Madden's retirement and what's happening with the Raiders next. And then it's Madden explaining to his wife his current situation. The way the writer flowed those all together was really cleverly done. They took advantage of a lot of the formatting in screenplays to convey this without you losing pace or feeling jostled by the sudden quick changes of the set. Like it's not, okay, piece of dialogue, then back to interior press room, piece of dialogue, then interior living room, piece of dialogue, then interior press room, Al, piece of dialogue. Like it was, nope, we're going into an actual conversation, almost as if we're able to visualize it as it would have been in the final presentation, as it were to be a movie. And he took advantage of parentheticals to convey to us which character is speaking to who. I liked how the lines kind of flowed together to still feel like they're telling a story, as opposed to it being like an abrupt, well, I'm repeating the same moment over and over again,
Yes,
but to three different
exactly.
audiences, so to speak.
Yeah, and that was the thing. It was like a dance. It was like they were weaving, and the Q&A was intermingling between the different scenes, and the question for this scene was answered by this person in this other scene, and it was great. It was fantastic. That was one of the jewels in this script that I really enjoyed.
I encourage any newer writers out there that are interested in like kind of recreating or has their own type of method of jumping between two different scenes or three different scenes to orbit a singular point. Taking a look at this style is a great model as an example to try and emulate and keep, the reader engaged, as opposed to what has been kind of traditionally done, or what one would assume when they're starting out they have to do in order to have this flow. Yeah, I thought that was quite good. What was your next point that stood out?
Okay, so I've got a few more on the good, and then I'll move on to the bad. So the next thing was one of the things that stood out. I know it was a small thing, but I felt like it was important for character development, or building character, as far as us having a relationship with Madden, understanding him as a human, and being able to relate to him. And that was with the cable guy on the phone. Being annoyed, wasn't sure if, he got a 4-hour window when he was going to show up, and he kind of vents a little bit of that to his wife, Virginia. But I just thought, why would this, imagine writing the script and you're pulling from the nether. You're just trying to add little layers to your story here. And, our writer here was like, oh yeah, the cable guy, we'll put him in there. And he's like, John's at home and he's fired, and he's, I'm sorry, he's retired, and he's trying to just deal with daily life. And what's more mundane than the cable repair guy has to come out and fix your, your TV or your VCR, I think it was. But yeah, it was great. I love that. That was fun.
Yeah, I appreciated how he had to differentiate between VCR and VHS.
Yes, it was a way to kind of show his lack of tech savviness, which we're going to get to later when he starts to deal with the software guys at EA.
No, I thought it was a simple, easy, relatable scene showing a conflict and setting up his future interactions with people that are very tech savvy is going to come with its own form of conflict as well. And if Madden wants to survive this, he's got to start learning that world and integrating it into the one that he's most familiar with.
Right. And I think, it's one of the cardinal rules that if you're writing a story, if it's on the page, it needs to be there for a reason. It has to have some sort of forward momentum in the story, right? It has to be there for a reason. Otherwise, it's a waste of time.
Yeah, it's either to establish character, to further develop the plot, or 3, not always, but sometimes make the person laugh. And if it doesn't achieve at least 2 of those, it's not really relevant to the writing aspect. In this case here, I felt that it kind of achieved all 3. We have developed character. We show a concept of the plot, which is that he is not. The script is telling us that he is not comfortable with the mundane life. His skill set is football, and now that he's not in there, he still needs something to do. And the normal world, the normal life that he's used to, is definitely not helping in that regard.
Yeah, he's probably going to tackle the cable guy when he finally shows up 2 hours late, and that's what he's going to do, because that's the world that he lives in.
Right. Yeah.
Okay, and then my last good thing, I would just say pacing overall was good. I think that it didn't drag very much in very many places, and so I was pretty happy with that. I felt like what was there needed to be for the most part, and that it clipped right along, and it wasn't overly long script. So yeah, that's all of my good.
Yeah, well, it didn't feel like an overly long script. It was 124 pages. That's your 2-hour movie right there. I don't know about you, but for me, I was able to read this script in under 2 hours easily. It was just a fast-paced read. I think that's showcasing the talent, at least behind the writer's ability to convey those ideas and get them on the page. And I think that goes a long way, and probably why a lot of producers were interested in this script when it started to circulate the industry. With that, let's get into your criticisms. What, Mack, did you find lacking in this script?
Okay, I just kind of want to make sure I get through everything, so I won't be too long-winded on each of these, but stop me if anything catches your eye.
Sure.
The first thing, this is sort of a weak argument, but it did stand out to me, which was that Madden suddenly coaching his kids' football team felt very jarring to me. It was like we went from, I think, the living room to him, boom, he's out there on the field yelling at his son. And I get it, we can do these kind of cuts in film, but to me, I felt like we needed a little bit more established to finally to take that step and cut to that exterior shot. But that felt kind of off to me. That was one. And then the next thing was that some of the dialogue between Madden and the nerds felt like it needed another pass. It was just a little too clunky, is the best way I'd describe it. It felt like Madden's end. I think the nerds were fine. I think that some of the dialogue Madden or his responses didn't feel Madden-esque to me. Like they just weren't. They didn't feel right. They needed to be rewritten. They were too cheesy or a little bit empty or hollow to me. So that'd be another one. The next thing I wrote down was not enough time spent at EA showing the struggles of the game being made. I wanted to see more of that. I wanted to be behind that curtain, especially where EA's now, where it's had its rise and its fall. So many people are unhappy with EA for very for reasons that they've earned.
Oh yeah.
But this is the beginning of that. So it'd be nice to see EA when it was good, happy, awesome beginning EA. It's like Apple with the Wozniak days in the garage. Like we want to see that, we want to see it before it became this gigantic, creature that is kind of soulless now,
Yeah, I think it would be to the advantage of this script if it addressed more of the problems that these programmers are facing trying to achieve this game, because I think they had this very interesting scene where Madden takes a look at the game and he sees that it's not 22 players. It's not an 11 versus 11 on the field, and the reason being is that the programmers say the technology is not there to do it. And unfortunately, even though Madden has a tantrum of sorts in that scene, we never really get to see from the programmer side the revelation they needed in order to achieve the result that Madden needed if he was going to put his name on this game. Right, exactly. And where it became such a legacy to his name. Like, it's so important. Like, that's huge. That's a huge part. And so, yeah, and I'll get into more of that in my fixes section. But yes, that was just something, and I was just like, yeah, I wanted to see more of that. There wasn't enough of that. And then the other thing, I've got two more. The next thing was the new CEO at EA after Tripp stepped down. Felt really, how do I say this? Just he wasn't fleshed out enough. It was like he was there. He's the boss. And this is how it is. And I would have loved, I don't know, even one more minute of dialogue with him to kind of more establish his character and how much of a threat. Like, do we like this guy? Do we not like this guy? He felt very cookie cutter to me. Like, he's the boss and he's going to be the one that is going to gatekeep if this happens or not. And that was it. And I just felt like, I think we could have had some more fun with this CEO, especially between Madden and the CEO. He's introduced out of left field, kind of a monkey wrench thrown into after the fact. There was not really much setup as to who this guy was, what his role at EA was going to be. Was the writer going to frame it as this is the guy, this man is the reason why EA is what it is today? Like, is he the first seed of the bureaucracy and the lousy ethics that the game is doing? The company is doing with their games? We don't know, and unfortunately, we don't get really any substance out of that. And I feel like that's just kind of the writer's attempt to try and generate an antagonist, which is something that I felt was kind of lacking in this story. Is there wasn't really a sole antagonist, at least an authentic one, that worked for this. Because of course they bring in like Joe Montana, and it's like he's there maybe like twice or three times you kind of see him, and very briefly throughout the entire script. And I'm thinking to myself, well, this isn't really a foreboding antagonist. He's not doing anything to really get under John's skin. He's not doing anything to throw a wrench in his plans or goals. He's just kind of a rival for the sake of being a rival. And I felt the same attitude was happening with this new boss at EA after Tripp decided, okay, he's no longer going to be the CEO. He's going to stick to the programming side, or at least leading teams to program other games. So it was, yes, I completely understood where you're coming from there. It was very lacking.
Yeah, we didn't have a villain to kind of all rally behind him. Like, go get him, John. Use that temper for, take it out on this person. And and Montana, I think he was kind of heading towards that because Montana had his game versus, Madden's game. We see that from the CEO again. It was very quick, very brief. And we're like, okay, so this is our conflict. These two games are going to go head to head and one of them is going to survive.
Yeah.
So that works on paper, but I feel like we didn't build around that enough for us as viewers to be like, oh yeah, this is going to come down to this, especially where we see John just kind of bail on it, right? And so I feel like it got messy. The script kind of got messy there, and that kind of leads into my fixes. But along with that, we kind of touched on this. My last bad thing was that I felt like in that scene at EA with Mike, his son, who was so stoked to go in there and meet these programmers that he idolized, that Madden lost his temper instantly as soon as he looked at the game and saw there's only, what was it, 14 players on the field.
Yep.
And then freaked out and had his little temper tantrum. And I felt like that was not fair. We could have that scene worked, but we needed to add one or two layers to it, and I'll get to that in my fixes. So yeah, those are all my bads. Any questions, comments?
Well, I mean, I just think that's you have a good eye there. Yeah, those are all valid issues because, again, when we're dealing with a story, we want basically what stories are problems that need to be solved by the main character. And if you don't have juicy enough problems, then we're not really getting a story. We're getting just kind of events happening. We're going through the motions, as it were. We're getting too much of a taste of real life and not enough of the drama that movies require. Like there's that famous quote from Alfred Hitchcock, which says that, movies are life with the boring stuff come out. So all you have left is drama. Or I'm paraphrasing it. I'm butchering it terribly at the moment right now. But it's basically what you're trying to do. And in some of the cases here, especially some of the scenes that you brought up, stories are really about man versus all these externals with the occasional option of him versus himself. And I think John Madden versus himself, at least in the context of this script, his is not a strong enough adversary to warrant the drama that this would require. I mean, him losing his temper, that the fact that the game isn't 22 players and is instead 14, I don't think that's enough to warrant a conflict. It's like, well, how is he going to get over this type of thing? Or how is he going to get to his next goal? How is he standing in his own way? I didn't get a sense of that with some of the conflicts that were brought up. And I think that's also reflective in the fact that all the antagonists that are presented here just don't feel like they actually stand a chance to threaten Madden from achieving his goals or the programmers from achieving their goal.
Right, or his relationship with his family. Like we know they get to the point where they kind of walk out of the house, but there was never ever like a real threat of divorce. Right. And I feel like that wasn't fleshed out enough either. We really should have seen how his internal conflict got to a point where it almost cost him not just the game deal, but his whole family. Yeah. And depending on your point of view, one of those is more important than the other. To me, it'd be the family, right? Like yes. you can always find a way to make money, but your family and those relationships, you could burn those bridges to a point that you can never recover them. And that kind of comes into my fixes.
Take it away, sir. Yes, go for it.
Yeah, thanks. So first fix, focus mainly. This is what I would do. Focus mainly on the game development, more on the game development, with the side story following John and his family. Because we were already kind of doing that. We weren't doing it enough, like what we were just talking about. Like, let's see a little bit more with John and Mike, and with John and Virginia, and see how can we play with these dynamics a little bit more, and how those plot points fire off at the same time as what's happening at EA. And I think we could have played those together and against each other in a way where now he's working too much on the game. He's not home enough, or he's frustrated with what happened to EA and he comes home and takes it out on his son, or vice versa. Something like that. We could have had more. I think we could have more substance there.
Yeah, I think that's a valid one. I also think getting a better sense of like how much time is being passed in making this game, right? Because when we're dealing with a biopic, we're picking from history. And if I'm not mistaken, like Madden, the last game he coached was in like 78, and the time the Madden NFL game came out was like 88, 89. So you have a decades of span here, which means that the interactions you're going to have with his son, Mike is going to be going from like a young kid to either a teenager or young adult by the time this video game comes out. I don't think it did the best job in framing the elapsed time, or even the characters, especially his kid, kind of growing up around this moment of Madden's life. I think that was a missed opportunity as well.
Yes, and that's a great point. I didn't even think about how much time passed. I mean, I know, okay, game development takes a while, 3-5 years, whatever, for this to work, probably.
Right.
But yeah, that's true. I didn't really think about that angle, but I was focused more. I think it would have been a little more biopic-y if it had been more, if we spent a little more time with the family. I would have liked to have seen that. And that's what I put in my next bullet, is it would be better if the reason that Madden changed his mind and reached out to Tripp was because of Mike, his son, not just because he had nothing else to do and he was getting stir crazy. And the way I would have built up to that is I would have had the game. So Madden lives for football. His son obviously has made it clear he's not interested in football, but he is interested in D&D and video games and things along everything that was coming up at that point in popularity in the 80s. And so I'm like, well, there's your gap, right? The gap is obvious. Is a video game of football is the best of those merging of those two worlds, and now we can lead up to that, and that can be our big payoff finally. As if you were to be like, oh my gosh, he almost lost his family because of his temper, because of he was on the road all the time coaching, and then this huge life change. He gets forced in retirement. Now he's got this opportunity that he almost even walked past that because he thought it was stupid and didn't understand it. His son kind of was like, Dad, that's kind of cool. And you know what I mean? And so the son is what brings him back to that. And then in the end, we have them do this. And hold on, I'm trying to keep my thoughts gathered here. So this is what I would say. Go back to that scene where I felt like Madden freaked out too early when he saw there's only 14 players on the field.
Right.
And we build up to this scene. His son's like, oh my gosh, who's so-and-so's going to be here. So-and-so's going to be there. And Madden's like, yeah, he's the one that wears the cloak, whatever. Like, just, he doesn't care. It's another day at the office for Madden. But his son is like, this is the coolest thing ever. I'm meeting these people that are superstars, right? Mm-hmm. And then in the script, they get up there, Madden sees the players on the field, punches the screen, whatever happened. I can't remember. He got mad. And then that was the end of it. And I was like, no, like what we should have done. This is what I wrote down. Let Mike and Madden enjoy a few plays on the game at EA. Play some magical music, and we see the screen up close, and we see these old, whatever they were, 8-bit graphics or 4-bit graphics, whatever they were in 1988. And then after like 3 or 4, whatever, several plays, we see Madden pause and like look really close at the screen, look over at the programmers, look back at the screen, and then freak out, right? And then he freaks out. And he's like, no, it's got to be 22. And so he ruins this sweet bonding moment he had with his kid. And then that's down the toilet. And so I felt like that would have been better in that scene. And then my last bullet here, and just stop me, script, if you want to talk on anything. Sorry, man.
No, go right ahead, because I think you took advantage of a good, interesting point. If there's a conflict where Madden is trying to relate with his son, and his son is not interested in football, and that's all that Madden knows, but his son is still interested in games. They're very different games. They're not sports. They're Dungeons and Dragons. They're computer games, and he's like, I'm home. I want to get to know my kid better, and I want to understand what he's doing. The best way to do that he knows how to do it, is by talking about a common interest, which for him is going to be football. But if he can't get his son out on the field, but he knows that he plays games, maybe, yes, taking advantage of Tripp's proposal to make a Madden game will allow him to communicate to his kid how much he loves his game and how much he loves his kid and what can go there. And I like the idea of your suggestion of he goes in to show his kid this game to try and win points with him and get on board. And I think letting his kid play the game and really liking it, and maybe I'd modify your correction where I wouldn't have him play the game right away. I'd have his kids start playing the game, and then I'd have Madden start to realize, well, wait a minute. Yeah, there's not, like your idea, there's not enough players on there. And instead of him joining in to play the game with his son, he refuses to do so because it's not something worthy of the Madden name. And the fact that his kid is liking it is like, no, you're ruining my chance to bond with my kid because you're showing him, a 50% version of this game. Like, you're not putting in the effort of what this in this game of what this game requires, and that type of thing. I think that's a nice way to round it out, because if you're dealing with a guy like John Madden who loves football so much and football's all his life, it's going to stretch credulity if the moment that he sees that there's not enough players on the field, he's going to try to ignore that right away. Like, I think that's part of that internal conflict. That's part of the thing that would lead into the temper tantrum, and also do what at least the screenwriter wanted in this case, which is put a stopgap in the progress of him bonding with his kid, and also working with this programming team that is pretty much intimidated by Madden throughout their entire interaction.
Yeah, and we see him, and that's the thing, it's the forest for the trees. Instead of being like, okay, finally I got this moment, he's got it in his head, I'm going to have this moment with my son, and then just because there's not enough players on the field, he ruins all of it between the programmers and between his son. He just craps all over that moment,
Yeah, and what was your final critique, final correction?
So yeah, here's the last thing, and I wrote a little bit of script here, so stop me, but I think it'll be pretty quick. I'm going to read it, but I said also that there should have been a moment where Virginia bridges the communication gap between John and Mike. I'd stick it after his attempt at coaching his son, and I'd write it something like this. All right, here we go.
Go for it.
Interior night, dining room table. John and Virginia sit across from each other with an untouched plate and an empty seat between them. Madden, the kid is impossible, as he throws his hands up, exasperated. Virginia, John, you have to come to terms with the fact that our son just doesn't like football. If you want to connect with him, you have to do it on his terms. You have to think like he does. You can't force him. John, but all he does is play that damn Dungeons and Dragons and video games. Virginia, and you are sitting on a chance to make a video game about football. Madden grunts and angrily flicks a pea off his plate. So you're saying instead of playing football, he plays wiggling his fingers, mimicking a joystick. He plays football? Virginia glances at the exploded pea on her dining room wall and then back at John. Or you could keep yelling at him and then more quietly from the sideline. John looks down at the Super Bowl ring on his finger, adjusts it, then looks up at his wife, then to the empty seat and sighs. That scene right there would have established like why that would have been him finally going, okay, I need to start looking at this as a good thing where I can bring my son in and we can meet together on, common ground.
Yeah, I think that's a good start right there to kind of bridge into expressing John's motivation as to why he's doing this. Not just because it's his love for football, but also, hey, this opens up an opportunity to get to know my son who has closed the door on me because John's love of football is the reason why his son is there and able to live the life that he lives, right? So he has to try and find a way to bridge all that. And I like that idea. I think that's a good suggestion for the writer to consider if he decides to do a rewrite and if he decides to listen to the show.
Well, and the last thing I would do in the ending, I love the ending. I like how they what do you call that in a script where you do the fade to black and then you just throw up some text? Is there a technical term for that? Is there like
it's just a simple kind of it's either a montage of or like an end card sequence. So it's just okay, we're going to throw up a couple of title cards showing like what happened to these characters. It's either simple titles. Sometimes they call them chyrons, but chyrons generally like move along, like kind of scroll at the bottom of the screen, depending on what your terminology is. But in your traditional screenwriting format, it's really just like, okay, these are the end title cards that are going to be set up. So you establish an image, and then you establish some text to denote what that image is going to represent. So Madden became the number one selling video game.
Yes, and I like. That's the part I really liked. I made one last change in my last bullet that I would add to what they did for that because I liked that ending. I just would have had one more little thing, which is this. I'd end with John sitting down to join Mike in front of the Apple II to finally enjoy football together as he picks up the controller and Mike's sitting there waiting for him. Then zoom in on the original Madden game. So we zoom tight in on the screen, right, of the original game. Mm-hmm. And if you've ever seen it, you can Google it right now. Look at the intro screen to the original Madden game. And it's got really terrible sound and terrible graphics, but Madden comes punching through like the logo, and then boom, he's there on your screen, right?
Yep.
And that would have been awesome with the original sound effects. So then that's our payoff, right? We finally see the game. It's all done, right? Mm-hmm. Then fade to black, play the NFL trumpet theme, show the closing in the script that we have, then run old football footage of Madden doing voiceover for the NFL. I know this would all cost money for rights with the NFL, but doing voiceover of real NFL games next to the credits as they roll. So we can kind of see John's journey, because that's one thing they didn't really talk about was his career shift into doing commentary work and voiceover work, and we could have seen a clip of him with the what was it called, the turkey duck everything combination. I can't remember what it was.
Yeah.
Yes, the turducken. We could have seen a clip of that as the credits are rolling, and I think that would have been just a tighter, funner quote end quote ending for us to close the film. So those are my notes.
Well, I think those are great notes, things to consider, and I liked what you were able to pick up and the suggestions you offered, Mack. So I want to thank you for chiming in with your second thoughts on the script that we reviewed, and I look forward to hearing more of these on future scripts that we have up until we come to your debut show, which is not too far away, really, but it's going to feel that way.
Well, I appreciate the opportunity. This is fun. I think all of us that are getting opportunities to co-host with you are looking forward to it. So yeah, I'm excited to do this every Saturday, and yeah, appreciate it. Thanks, Script.
I want to thank everyone out there for listening in to this episode. As always, be sure to follow the show on Twitter at ScriptsOnSats. If you like the show, please consider supporting on Patreon at patreon.com/thescriptdoctor, where you will find out early what the script we'll be reviewing on Saturdays will be, and where you can leave a comment that will be read live on the show by us. So with that, I want to thank Mack for joining me today. I want to thank you all out there for listening, and never forget, when it comes to great story, it all starts with the script.